Good evening and welcome to this January 9th, 2023 meeting of the Bluff Village Board of Trustees. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Yankoman?
Here.
Trustee Fisher?
Here.
Trustee Hatch?
Here.
Trustee Marquis?
Here.
Trustee Ryder?
Here.
Thank you. Please stand and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flags of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Our first item is the consideration of the minutes of the December 12th, 2022 Village Board meeting. Is there a motion to approve these minutes?
So moved.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Any changes? Thank you. Clerk, please call the roll.
Is that a voice vote?
It's a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. The motion passes. Next, item 4 is our non-agenda items and visitors. The village president and board of trustees allocates 15 minutes during this item for these individuals who would like the opportunity to address the village board of trustees on any matter not listed on the agenda. Each person addressing the village board of trustees is asked to limit their comments to a maximum of 5 minutes. I do not see anybody wishing to make a comment tonight here in this room. Do we have anybody online willing to?
We have one person attending online, but they are not raising their hand to make any comments. You can ask this gentleman.
Do you wish to make a comment tonight outside the agenda, or are you here for items on the agenda?
I'm here just to see I'm here about the leaf blowers.
Perfect. All right. So I say we move forward. Item number 5, Village Board sets the order of the meeting. The Village President and Board of Trustees will entertain requests from anyone present on the order of business to be conducted during this Village Board meeting. Do we have any requests?
I would take item 7 as well as, item 7.
Anybody all in favor?
Just without objection.
Without objections? Moving on to item 7, our village administrator's report. Mr. Irvin.
So yes, thank you. There are a handful of items under my report this evening, the first of which involves CLC Jawa has a request to waive permit fees. They're doing a significant improvement at their facility, and Grant is here, Wallert from CLC Jawa, but essentially they're seeking a waiver of building permit fees in the amount of a little over $101,000 related to a significant improvement exceeding $3.3 million at their water plant. Fees like this are of a scale that the board would consider waiver consistent with the policy. Happy to answer any other questions. I know Grant is here as well.
I would just ask if you had an estimate of the out-of-pocket portion of expenses that the village might incur in the review process.
To my knowledge, none, but it's been past practice, as I'm sure you're about to bring up, where the village did try to recapture any fees that if we had any outside consultants, but I don't think there's any at this moment.
Thank you.
Drew, historically, have we waived these fees in the past for CLC?
For seals, yes.
Do we have any questions on the board to the extent of the work that would happen at Jawa that would affect our community?
So there's just a simple motion to approve the request.
I move that we approve the request.
Second.
Roll call.
Clerk, please call the roll call.
Trustee Ackerman?
Aye.
Trustee Fisher?
Aye.
Trustee Hatch?
Aye.
Trustee Marquis?
Aye.
And Trustee Ryder.
Aye.
All right.
Great. Thank you for what you guys are doing at Jawa. And I had a chance to have a tour with Bill Susi, and what you're doing is absolutely wonderful and very innovative. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Lake Bluff, for being such gracious hosts to the agency. And like President Charlo this evening has had the tour. If anyone is ever interested in taking a tour, I love giving tours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Grant.
Thanks. Really cool.
The second item under my report is something that hasn't been requested in a number of years, actually, is the Lake Bluff and Lake Forest Kiwanis Club, and Dave Lee's here tonight from the club, has requested to take advantage of the village's fundraising program whereby the village issues its normal vehicle sticker. Residents are offered a chance to pay a little more for usually a very attractive sticker highlighting some special event. In this event, it is the Kiwanis Club anniversary. And if there's no objections, then we'll go ahead and proceed in that manner. One thing I would note is sometimes this usually happens, right? There's no activity, then there's multiple requests. In this case, a village, I will call it sub-agency, the farmers market, it's their 30th anniversary. So that'll be the default sticker this year. And then the Kiwanis Club will be the alternative sticker where they can pay a small fee and benefit the club. Any questions about that?
Will there be pancakes on the sticker?
Will there be pancakes on the sticker? They are.
The silhouette of children.
Wondering.
That's the motto, is to serve the children.
So that's great. I'll take that direction. The third item on my report is what I would just simply refer to as a referral to the Sustainability and Community Enhancement Committee. The village for some time has had representatives, including myself and the chair of the village's SEC committee, studying leaf blower regulations in and around the North Shore. The objectives of this group have been to try to see if there was a way to have some uniformity to help service providers in the area, but also to try to address primarily noise, but subsequent to that, environmental issues as well that have been associated with gas-powered leaf blowers. So that report was finalized by the group late last year, provided to you all, and at this time staff is suggesting that it be recommended to be handed off to the SEC for study and thoughts and return to you all with a recommendation, if any, to change the village's regulatory environment. I know there's a handful of folks here tonight on that same question.
Well, I just had a question. I know that there were a couple of representatives from some of the larger landscaping companies, and certainly the smaller landscapers were mentioned a number of times, and it seems as if that was considered, although there was no representative from that exact community on the board. It does sound like there was representation in spirit in considering how this might affect those smaller providers of landscaping services. So I was glad to hear about that. Because the goal of what we're doing would be not to put those types of providers out of business, but to, improve, the health of the community in terms of the air we breathe and the sounds that we have to hear. And just, I'm always about the peaceful and enjoyment of your own property. I think that's of, utmost importance for everyone.
And I would like to actually sustain this comment by saying that probably more than half of the comments I get out in the street is about noise. And following the pandemic, a fair amount of people are working from home, and having one or two leaf blowers will be a joy killer to trying to have a work environment at home. So I really appreciate what this will do to our community going forward, whatever the decision is. Yes. Can you please state your name and be on the microphone? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bob Kogan. I've been a Lake Bluff resident for 5 years. So anyway, I moved here from Evanston, and in a much larger community, and it was so much quieter. And they have a ban from, I believe it's either May through September or May through October, where leaf blowers are not allowed. And I'm not sure they're going out of business. I mean, the woman on the far left said she's worried about the small firms going out of business. So I'm retired. I retired last year, so I have time to. I watch what they do. They they blow the sidewalks. There's no leaves on the sidewalks in July. And then they blow the streets. And I'm like, why are these individuals leaf blowing the streets? And their gas. And so when I first moved, the first year, I thought, oh, this is a great tree community. It must be the trees they're cutting down or trimming, because the noise was so loud, I thought it was tree trimming. And then when I'm shocked to hear that see that it was leaf blowers. My son just moved back for just a couple months, and he said, this is the loudest community I've ever lived in. So, it was just, he wasn't prompted to say it. He was just like, every day there's, like from 8 until 5, it's nonstop leaf blowing. And there are no leaves in July on the ground, or August, or June, or May. So I'm not sure why we're letting these companies, and the electric aren't much better. Electric leaf blowers aren't that much quieter. So I'm wondering, like, what is the reason that we're letting them do this? I know I read the Lake Bluff newsletter online a couple, like in May or April or March, and they're saying they're going to put a ban on it, and then they rescinded it. They said, no, we're going to give it more thought. Like, what happened in that time from when you banned it to when you said, we're not going to? Is it Mariani that is?
So part of the two things as a response, as a very quick response, as a proposal to that study group would be a ban, a seasonal ban from April to September. No, we live in a forest as opposed to Evanston. We're part of that great oak grove going from Evanston all the way to southern Wisconsin. So it's a little bit of different environment. Now, what I would like to say is also I would really urge you to attend the sustainability work group. I mean, you have a unique position of being able to be in Lake Bluff and listen to the days. Go and attend those meetings and provide your opinion. It's actually very worthwhile to our community.
So what group do you want me to
This is
attend?
the SEC, the Sustainability and Environment Commission, that is on what days?
They typically meet on the last Wednesday of the month, but their schedules, the next meeting, in fact, is on actually January 17th is the next meeting.
January
And
17th?
the lead
Here?
is,
Right
Yes.
here? Oh.
and the lead is Brian Renner, and so provide your feedback.
So, just what happened when they banned it and then they rescinded the ban and said, we're going to study it more? What
I'm sorry, which community are you describing?
Lake Bluff, I thought they had banned it or talked about banning it or.
So there was a number of residents that came forward with a petition asking the village to enact a seasonal ban. And the village said, this issue is under study, please stay tuned. And that's basically, that's where we're at now. That from time to time, the village has looked at this issue, it's probably every couple of years it has come up, and the village has changed its regulations, trying to improve the oral tranquility of the community, and so it's been trying to find that right sweet spot between allowing people to take care of their properties in a way they would like to, and also trying to manage those other issues. And so this issue has come up numerous times, and that's probably the best way to describe it. But the village has not banned it outright ever, to my knowledge.
So, okay. So if Evanston can do it, what's our reluctance to do it,
That's a great question, and I talked about it earlier with some residents here on the same topic. Evanston was part of the study group, as some other communities that have the ban, because they're having such a difficult time enforcing it. And so that's, again, one of the early goals was, how can we do something in a uniform way that makes it easier for those that provide these services to work in a uniform regulatory environment, so that it's easier to do that it's not unlike cell phones. For a period of time in Illinois, you could text in Winnetka, but you couldn't in Wilmette, and vice versa. So before it became a state law, so the idea that the North Shore got together and said, let's try to find a way to do this together to make it easier for everybody. And because even though they have it on the books, they struggle to enforce it. And it's the time, law enforcement, or whoever's enforcing it, code enforcement officers, or community service officers show up at a property, usually it's a moot point, right? The noise is ended, or it's very difficult to enforce. And so they were trying to find a way to do it and learn from others and find best practices and look across the country, because just as a lot of people came to the village during the pandemic and said, I've never noticed how loud it was. I haven't been at home. I've been working from home, and it's really loud. How can we do something about it? So that has been a big outcry nationally. And I think a lot of communities are where we're at. Some towns that we've seen where they have dialed back the number of days when they are permitted and said, okay, you can't use them on Sundays, now you can't use them on Saturdays, and slowly is taking days away that they're available to be used at all. Others have done the seasonal ban. There's been different techniques and strategies to try to do it, but it's,
Just a simple question is, what is the downside of banning it?
there's some people in certain properties that lend themselves that it makes sense from just a pure efficiency standpoint to use equipment of this nature, like golf courses and tennis courts and
Oh,
large
yeah,
estates.
that I get, yeah. But how about residential, though? I mean,
Well,
why?
there's some very large, many acre, large estates, that it's much more efficient, from an economic standpoint, to use those tools in Lake Bluff as well. But I think to your point, it's just a quick way for service providers to provide a certain level of service that's been residents have been accustomed to for a number of years. So there's a number of residents that like the ability for leaf blowers to happen. So there's usually been both sides of the conversation at meetings over the years.
The real issue is for professional landscapers, people that are doing that from a morning to evening, especially during April, spring cleanup and fall. They cannot sustain the load having electric leaf blower right now. So we have to mitigate sound to efficiency.
Well, I'm just speaking for myself, but I don't think people would complain about April and October. I know I filled 75 bags of leaves, and I will never do that again. We're going back to our service next year. We thought we'd give it up since we're both retired. We'll do it. And it was like, no, never again. But so I don't think people would have a problem with that. I think they have a problem even with the biggest states. No matter how big your state is, leaves still don't fall in July.
So the point is for the SEC is to look at what you're talking about.
Okay.
This is exactly what will be discussed, and providing something that can be logical and enforceable and consistent with communities around us.
Okay, great.
Okay.
So next Tuesday, you're saying that there'll be a SEC meeting here at 7 o'clock?
It is Wednesday, the 7th.
Wednesday?
7 p.m.
Okay. Wednesday's the 18th.
I don't want to tell you wrong. Hold on. You're probably right. Tuesday, the 17th.
Okay, here. Okay, thanks. Thank you.
So, what I understood we were waiting for was exactly what we have now, I think. We have the report from the regional joint study group, working group, I guess is what they called it, right? And a lot of information about what other communities are doing, both in our area, what they're doing and considering doing, and then what other communities outside of Illinois are doing even. So a great deal of information, which I think is exactly what we were waiting for. So my question is, what's next? I have a feeling I know what the SEC is going to recommend, but let's assume, or that I know the direction they're going to be recommending. There's pretty overwhelming evidence that these are not good for the environment from this report that we have now. So what's next? So the meeting on the 17th, they will recommend what they believe we ought to do, and then it comes back to us, or an ordinance in draft comes to us. Can you explain maybe for me and others what the next steps will be?
Well, if they were to be able to work through the entire issue in a meeting, then in theory, yes, they could recommend a change to the village's codes that you all can choose to enact over some time frame. You can do it quickly, you can spread it out over time. One of the things that the group in the report talks about is trying to work, if you are going to make a change, let's reach out to the other communities and see if we can try to come back and see if there's any consensus to move forward, and maybe there is a chance that we can find uniformity.
Yeah,
And so if there's a chance to, at least people can get through the issue and then decide, okay, this is where Lake Bluff is going to proceed, and let's see how Wilmette's going to proceed, and Glencoe and Lake Forest, and maybe get back together and see if there's uniformity, and if so, then let's try to, march lockstep so that we can have this uniformity.
do we have any hope of having a quiet June?
That's the heart of your question, right?
Part of the question is there any chance this is going to get resolved by May 15th or whatever the date might be? No.
There's no requirement for the village to wait on others to do something. So but there is the idea that we work together this long. Let's see if there's a reason or ability to find common ground amongst communities.
Yeah.
Because
Makes
part of the
sense.
issue is that if the people start switching regulatory situations and they find out, oh, well, Winnetka did it this way, maybe we should have done that too. And so
Yeah.
So the idea of let's,
Do we have a sense that this group is trying to move toward 2023, or do we have any sense of?
I think every group is in a different situation to some degree. There's some people that may do nothing to change. Like they could say, we're fine.
Yeah.
And others may be much more aggressive and completely ban it.
I see.
Any gas or electric powered.
Have we ever actually just gone out to the community saying that, like, the time frame might not work for this June, right? And just said, hey, you can talk to your landscaper and tell them, I don't want you to use the leaf blower on my yard. Have we ever, if there's people out there that are like, I don't want that to be used, I don't understand why we couldn't put that out as a public service announcement kind of thing and say, if you would prefer not to have a leaf blower used, talk to your landscaper and tell them you don't want it.
That was discussed, I think, maybe at the last couple of times the village has that approach, the idea of, you can always volunteer to not, residents can make a choice that they don't want to receive services in that manner. And some have. I've heard it, I know. So that's been talked about, and it's come up in the public meetings when the village has discussed this topic in the past. Some people have chosen to do it. Obviously, not all have, because it's still an issue, so.
Have we ever advertised that? Or
The
is that
village,
just-
yeah, we did. The village, at the last time the village had this conversation, the exact date is escaping me, but the service providers in the area came in and kind of made a public pledge to try to reduce the use of leaf blowers on weekends, and made a pledge to try to use them less in the summer, because that's usually when they're doing installations anyway, and not in the spring and fall. And so there was a commitment, and to some degree, that happened to some degree, but the truth of the matter is, a lot of the, I'll call them mom and pop organizations that are doing a lot of the services around communities that aren't necessarily using a bigger kind of corporate type firm, they didn't make that pledge, right? And so they weren't part of that promise. Some of the issues, practically speaking, is the village does not license landscaping firms, and that has come up. So from time to time, the village has chosen not to license them. It's easier to communicate them if they are licensed, right? We know who to call on and communicate changes in regulation. So that's an ancillary issue, which undoubtedly will come up as part of this conversation. But yes, that has come up.
But I think I was thinking more of the homeowner saying to the homeowner saying to the person working on the yard, I don't want that done. Like me as a homeowner, if I said to a little mom and pop, I don't want you to use the leaf blower, I think that person would say, great, less work, I'm done, whatever. So I understand we made a push towards the companies, but have we ever actually made a push towards residents and letting them know, like, hey, you could be a part of the solution by just telling them, I don't want that done on my property?
And I think what the end goal is, when people want their yard left looking a certain way when the vendor leaves, the service provider
Right.
leaves, I think that usually means, okay, if we're not going to use a blower, then we need to use a rake and a broom or something else, and it's going to cost you differently than what you're paying today, and it's going to take us more time, so we're going to charge you more for that. And that's what came up the last time as well. Is,
I do
listen,
remember discussing that.
it's efficiency for them. They can hit 6 yards in the time it takes to do one differently. And don't quote me on that, but it's a similar type of efficiency gain by using that type of equipment. Even though there's trade-offs.
There's another aspect also of using a leaf blower, and I've seen that at home multiple times. is because we live in a forest, the vegetation is very thin. If you use a rake, you actually destroy that vegetation, and a leaf blower is actually a lot more efficient to protect what is on the ground, so to the detriment of noise.
Do you really need to rake anything? Like, what are people raking in the summer?
Well, let me ask a question. So I think what I'm hearing is there's a benefit to the collective aspect of us, all of the North Shore doing this together, because it keeps some pressure on the companies so that they don't start pulling this, well, in Lake Bluff, they're standing alone and we can't use leaf blowers, so we're gonna charge a lot more. But what are the steps that we're taking? How does this play out, Drew? I guess I'm having a hard time envisioning how, what are the next steps in communicating with the other communities?
So what would happen is this would presumably refer to the SEC. They have a conversation, and then Brian and I would report back to the larger group and say, this is where Lake Bluff's at, and then there would be a check-in point and say, okay, there's some reasonable period where people can give it some time to get through this. And it probably wouldn't take that long, because people have been talking about this issue for a while. So I don't know that it's something that would take months and months and months and years to study further. I think a lot of people have a good feeling where they're at. So I think it'd be pretty quick, within the first quarter, even that there could be some idea, like, this is where everybody's at, a quick barometer reading. And then it can come back to you all and say, okay, this is where people are at. Looks like it's going to be us and this, and these communities going this direction, these communities in this bucket, and these communities in this bucket. And then you can decide if that's the path you want to go down, okay, or you can take a different path. But you'll have more information about, because that's usually, that does pop up if a community is considering a change in regulation. It's okay, well, what other comparable communities do? Right. So we have more information then. I don't think it's out of the possibility that there could be a change this year. I don't think so. I think maybe it's impacting more in the fall, but I think it's not out of the realm of possibility that there could be a change. I mean,
Though in the fall, we're gonna be right at the sweet spot where we're like, okay, and you can use your leaf blowers, so I get it.
yeah, and it's like, again, let's say the village moved towards the seasonal ban. There's an education period, right? There's going to
Right.
be people, even today, I know when Chief Smazinski started as the new chief of police, he said, okay, I'm going to do a one strike and you're out policy. And actually, no, you give you a warning, and then the next time we're going to cite you. There's been a lot of warnings. The fact that even the village has been operating in the same environment for years. Yeah.
Warnings on what?
On violation of the noise, so starting too soon, starting at
too
7
soon.
a.m. or doing work on a time frame when you're not supposed to, or,
I see.
yeah.
So to Susan's question, that is July, do we have a chance to achieve that timeline for the summer, for example?
That's completely up to you, right? At the end of the day, it's gonna be up to you, so.
Well, is there anything that would prohibit us from having the SEC talk about it, consider what is the best Lake Bluff fit that may or may not ultimately fit into this working group, but our goal is to try to pick something that we think that would work within the group, and then we could enact that as part of an information gathering period. It may be that that's the only thing that ever happens ever, because it's so great, and the committee doesn't move at the pace that we need it to, or it may be that we enact this, whatever the Lake Bluff flavor is, and then we get what the rest of the communities are doing, and we're okay with that tweak, and we adopt then. Because, I mean, ultimately, this working group is going to say, this is what a sample ordinance might look like, and, it'll have parameters, it'll have guidelines, but there's nothing that says that if we're really we've studied it, we've now learned a lot, we want to do something. There's nothing that says that we couldn't do this, and then in some future period of time, do the working group's version. We don't want to be passing ordinances weekly, but, I mean, if people feel passionately about it, and we've gotten a lot of information, perhaps we can move forward and,
Yeah, and the villages, again, that have talked about it, changed the rules in the past, and,
Yeah.
And revisited it. So
Yeah.
I think it's a
I kind of feel like that's the.
fluid situation.
I kind of feel like that's the sense that we're getting. We want to feel like we're doing something, especially we want to enjoy this summer. We've had all these reasons why we couldn't, and we're just wanting to enjoy our lives. So.
And there's nothing wrong with referring it to the SEC with your thumb on the scale and saying, we really want to, at a minimum, we're looking at a seasonal ban, right? Right?
That's what,
You can
you
do
know,
that too.
I kind of,
I'm-
I'm there.
And I think a seasonal ban for this town makes, I don't know, I wouldn't ban completely, but I think a seasonal ban is what we need.
And here's another, you don't have to refer to the SEC, although I think they would expect to
I
see it, right?
I would
Yeah.
like them to educate us further.
Why we have them.
Yes, and I want to respect what their thoughtful input is.
If my thumb can go on the scale, I'd like them to be talking about a seasonal ban that we have in place in 2023.
Please address the group on the microphone. Thank you.
I mean, are there citizens that say, I don't want the ban? I want my leaf blowers in July and August? I mean, is there actually like, but I
Yes.
mean, there are no leaves.
Yes.
The
There
whole
were-
point,
yeah.
the whole point of the SEC is to get these recommendations, to look at the possibilities, to query the community for us, for this board, and to come back to us with a recommendation. Okay, they will do the legwork to know, okay, that portion of the community might not like that. We will get that back from SEC. My recommendation to you was to go and sit on it and provide your feedback, so that it would be part of a recommendation. But the point is, exactly like PCCB and other boards, they do the inquiry, they do the hard work, and we get this back. We might rubber stamp it, we might discuss it, argue it, but at the end of the day, they will do the hard work.
Okay,
Okay?
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I was just thinking to Barb's point, like if we move forward and decide to do something on our own, that might be a good blueprint then for the rest of the group, right? They might say, okay, this is what Lake Bluff is doing, we can give them feedback on how it's working if they're still taking their time, kind of coming up with their own ordinance, and it might be a nice blueprint for the rest of the group. So I don't really see a negative to moving
I
forward.
bet we can do even better than Evanston.
So
Do you need,
there should be a motion.
I was about to
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
I think there's two that need, did we have a motion for the sticker?
I
don't
think
need
there's clear
it.
direction on
Just,
that.
it was just
I'm-
direct,
Okay.
okay.
We did not have a motion.
But a referral with a,
Yes.
Yes.
standing on the scale.
Standing, not just thumb.
Yeah.
No.
I would like
I'm
to
sorry,
make that
there's-
motion.
There's more,
So-
sir,
Yeah.
Mr.
What-
Mr. President, there's more public comment.
Pam Russell, 448. I like the way this discussion is going with the thumb. Let's, on behalf of the 350-some people who signed that petition for a seasonal ban, let's try to do it this summer, and it won't be perfect. When you talk about coordinating with other communities, there are already, if you read that report, there are a number of communities that have been doing it for years on the North Shore. It's, they've got to be dealing with some of the same landscapers, and so I don't know why, as Barbara says, do it and then get on board, but there are many that you could be on board with already, if that's the intent. So please push it. It won't be perfect this summer. It is an educational thing, but let's try to bring that volume down. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam.
So I would like to make a motion that we recommend that the SEC review this, and then we try to take action with an ordinance before the summer season begins.
Thank you. Can I please have a second?
I think the whole panel is
Second.
going to second it, but
Second, go ahead.
All right, so all in favor?
So that was the second.
Taryn, second.
Terrence got it.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you very much.
And the last thing I would like to report, I don't know if anybody wants to leave.
Go ahead.
But it's actually better if you stay. So, for this purpose, but it's for something totally, it's not even on the agenda, but when Lake Bluff has people retire from the village and if they've served the community for 10 years has been the mark, we usually do a resolution saluting them and thanking them for their labors for the village. Glenn is leaving the village after a mere 6 years. Glenn, we hardly knew ye. Glenn, about 6 years ago, we had a chance to interview Glenn for the assistant to the village administrator position here, and we learned during that interview and assessment center process that Glenn was ambitious, communicative, creative, and confident. And so we thought, okay, this could be good. And I'm going to say probably like 45 days into Glenn's service here, the village was making a pitch to the Rockland Fire Protection District. And Chief David Graff and I got together and we put together kind of like a business plan to say, this is why you guys should come with us. And Glenn had a background in journalism, his undergrad's in journalism, and he had a very good communicator and graphic artist even. And I said, hey, see what you can do with this. And he brought back something that was like, holy smokes, that's impressive. And I think Peter Friedman quoted and said, who'd you hire to do this? Like a consultant. And we said, okay, we did something good here. We hired somebody who's good. So we felt really good about that. First impression was good. And then over the last 6 years, we watched his trajectory move upward, and we learned that he was many other things and had many other wonderful characteristics. He was collaborative. He was autonomous. He was hardworking, very hardworking, inquisitive, and proactive, which showed up in my eyes. One of the things that I like to think that is probably his legacy here, and I don't know if it's during COVID and the pandemic, he really helped out administratively managing that for the organization in a way that helped everybody out, certainly me, and allowed me to do other things, and that has been huge here. So thank you so much for that, Glenn. That's fantastic. And you came in here, he wasn't a trained planner, but taught himself and did a lot of education, actually got a certification in planning, a national certification, which is not easy to do, and acquired it pretty quickly in his tenure, and helped build that portfolio of himself, and was able to contribute greatly to the village's amendments to its zoning code. I'm sad that he's leaving us right on the doorstep of us going through a comp plan amendment, but we'll find our way through the dark, I'm sure. But really appreciate everything he's done for us, and he'll be missed. We're going to have a small gathering of several hundred of his closest friends on Friday the 20th. I have that date right, Mr. Hogan, Friday the 20th at noon here in Village. So if you guys would want to attend, we'd love to have you, but I just want to say thank you, Glenn. Thank you. And one of the things I didn't say that turned out to be a really great thing about him that I was really nervous about, and I'm going to say this here, but I worry about his current new boss, never asked. He's a bit of an anarchist, and which I really liked. And I said, well, here's the choices are 1, 2, or 3, and he'd say it's purple. I'm like, hold on a second. Okay, but anyway, there, Rob, it's officially warned. You're warned. But I like the anarchist in you. Thank you. Thus concludes my report.
Thank you.
Yeah, as a fellow small-town Midwesterner, I've always enjoyed Glenn. Knew immediately when I was considering running for the village board that the way that he ran the PCZBA meetings was so well thought out, so well planned. So if Drew did half the job Glenn did at the PCZBA, that I was going to be okay on the village board. So I appreciate all of the professionalism you brought to it. I also appreciate his sense of humor, which is so understated that you sometimes don't even understand that it was a joke. The other day, in reference to something, he referenced me bending the knee, and it took me a while to figure out what he was talking about. But I thought, oh yeah, he was telling me I wasn't being, I needed to, bend the knee. So I really appreciated Glenn. He sets the standard. Maybe Drew actually sets the standard, but he certainly does a nice job of keeping us organized, and did that for the BCZBA, and really you'll be missed.
Can I also add, Glenn, to this laundry list of your accolades and strong personality traits? You're incredibly affable and approachable and kind. So as a new trustee coming aboard, I immediately felt like I could come to you and ask for guidance, which is something to be said, and I'm very grateful. And I'm very sad that you're leaving, but so excited for the next chapter. It's well earned, and I'm grateful. Keep in touch with us, please.
Yeah. Don't be a stranger.
And Glenn, I wanted to say thank you for all of your technical help. I think everyone can attest to the fact that it's very nerve-wracking when you want to say something, but you can't say it because the technology isn't there and it's all failing. So you always come to the rescue with technology. It's much appreciated. And you're just a gentleman. So it's fun to meet you at the farmer's market or at a board meeting. Just a wonderful gentleman. And I just thank you for your service to the village. Thank you very much.
Sure. I always think of the farmer's market when I think of Glenn, because that's where I always see him, outside of this room. So I always appreciate his hard work and all his efforts for the village, and it's been a pleasure. I think I started as the clerk when you were just hired, so we've kind of been on this journey a little bit together, and just a great representation of Lake Bluff. So thank you.
Thank you so much for always being open and available if we had questions. As a new trustee and the clerk, it was very hard to get acclimated, so thank you so much and good luck.
Hey Glenn, I'll miss your smarts around here and your smart-ass remarks, by the way. But I will miss you. You're a cool guy. And thank you for those wild conversations also. And you might be relieved to leave this village hall and not having to reset my passwords. So.
Yeah, I know. I was just.
So thank you very much for what you did for our community.
There is, I think, somebody online who has a comment to make as well.
Absolutely.
Maybe.
There is, I think, somebody online who has a comment to make as well.
Mr. Porter?
Oh, no.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
You have the floor, Mr. Porter.
Oh, God.
Can they hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Yes, as a concerned resident of Lake Bluff, I would like to express my dismay at the loss of Glenn. He has been a great asset for us, and the numerous village events that we have hosted. He has shown great flexibility, as well as a little bit of anarchy around the rules. And I hope that that spirit will be grandfathered in for future such events. Because we will, greatly miss working with Glenn to make those events a success. He was always very timely and flexible, and was a big part of making those events successful. So we're sad to see Glenn go.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you very much.
That's all I had.
Glenn, thank you.
One more round.
Moving forward, next is our village finance report, and that would be the warrant report for December 13 to 2022 to January 9th, 2023. Is there a motion to approve a warrant report?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Kat, second. Thank you. As a summary of background and reason for request, expenditures of village funds for payment were for payment of invoices in the amount of $297,594.81 for December 13, 2022 to January 9th, 2023. You will find reports and documents attached as the warrant reports for December 13, 2022, December 26, 2022, and December 27, 2022 to January 9th, 2023, totaling, again, $297,594.81. Are there any questions on these reports to Bettina?
I had a question that I asked of Drew earlier. I noticed that there was a payment to Axon Enterprises for some taser cartridges, and it just made me ask the question, what type of use have we had and that we, need to purchase these taser cartridges? And so I asked that question of Drew, and the use of these cartridges, whether it was in training or in law enforcement.
Training was the right answer to the question. But yeah, thank you, Trustee Ankerman, for that. So yeah, the periodic, what is the frequency of training, Matt?
So it's an annual training process, and part of that is deployment of 2 cartridges. So that is an annual training process with a deployment requirement of 2 cartridges per annual training cycle into a simulation target. And that's just part of the process of that recertification.
So it's per officer.
Per officer that is issued the taser, correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions about this report? If not, clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Fisher?
Aye.
Trustee Hatch?
Aye.
Trustee Markey?
Aye.
Trustee Ryder?
Aye.
And Trustee Ankerman?
Aye.
Thank you. Next is our November 2022 finance report. Mrs. O'Connell, can you please give us highlights?
Sure. Good evening. The monthly sales tax revenue on a cash basis for November fiscal year 23 is $318,891, which is about $56.89 or 1.8% greater than the fiscal year 22 cash basis receipts, and 9.96% greater than the pre-COVID receipts from November of fiscal year 20. Building permit revenue for fiscal year 23 to date is $501,305, $255,315 greater than the same reporting period for the period last fiscal year. General fund revenues for fiscal year 23 of $9,359,808 are $763,130 greater than the fiscal year 22 year-to-date revenues. Fiscal year 23 current expenditures are consistent with or less than budgeted for the total general fund. The fiscal year-to-date expenditures of $6,816,379 are $435,971 greater than the expenditures for the same period of fiscal year 22.
Thank you, Bettina.
Welcome.
Are there any questions on this report? Thank you. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? This report passes muster. Thank you. Next is item 8, our village attorney's report.
No report tonight.
Thank you. And followed by my report for tonight. I have called all of you regarding the Protect Illinois Community Act, regarding the passage of common sense legislation that includes bans on assault weapon and high-capacity magazines. And the consensus, the non-exception consensus was that we do not want to see that in our community. And as such, I have added my name to a petition that went to that legislation that was pushed by House member Bob Morgan. Okay, that legislation passed today, House and Senate in Illinois, and it's back in the House, banning in some forms or another high-capacity magazines and assault rifles. Okay, I think it is great. Again, given in light of what happened in Highland Park this past summer, it only is good for our community. So I'm actually very pleased about that. And I would like to thank you, Taryn, also for being part of a few people who worked very hard on that.
And I'm really grateful for your support, and I'm pleased to hear that my fellow trustees all stood behind you in signing that letter. The letter was a number of local presidents and mayors all signing together to express their support of the bill. I think when we talk about bills like this, it's important and exciting that Illinois is at the forefront. With this legislation specifically, this isn't about restriction of Second Amendment rights. It's really a public health concern. So it's about securing our children when they sit in school, our public servants like our police and our teachers. It's about being able to celebrate our nation's birthday in peace without being frightened or scared of.
Gunned down.
Exactly. So it's gun sense is one way of putting it, but it's also common sense legislation that supports our community members who are gun owners, who do it the right way, who get training and respect what those rights are and what they mean. So it's exciting times. There's a lot ahead. I'm sure that this bill will be challenged in the courts, but it says something that the state was able to come together with a lot of effort from community members to speak out in support of it. So thanks.
Any comments on this subject?
Just a big thank you.
Thank you. This is great. Moving forward. And moving forward to item number 10, that is the acceptance of a correspondence. Please note, all correspondence was delivered to the Village Board of Trustees at the informational reports on December 9th, 16th, 23rd, 30th, year 2022. Is there a motion to accept the correspondence?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. On any questions? This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. Thank you so much. Next item is item 11, a resolution approving a sign code exemption for the Chevy Exchange at 1001 Sherwood Drive. Is there a motion to approve this resolution?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you very much. The Chevy Exchange has purchased the former SMEBDO building at 1001 Sherwood Drive. There are two buildings on the site and two ground signs, one for the Animal Hospital of West Lake Forest and one that was the former SMEBDO building. The former SMEBDO sign is now proposed to become the Chevy Exchange through a face change to the existing sign. Because the method of measuring the area of a ground sign changed in 2019 so that it is now including the base and all the area under the sign, this sign no longer complies with the allowable area. It has a 60 square foot sign face, but the total area measured from the top to the ground is 83 square foot. The plans were presented to the Architectural Board of Review on January 3rd, VABR, by a vote of 5-0, recommended that the side code exemption and the sign be approved. VABR has the authority to approve signs which conform to the sign code, but only to make a recommendation to the Village Board for signs which require an exemption. Questions on the board?
I don't really have a question about the sign, but do you know how they intend to use that building? I'm just curious.
Right now, only internal storage of vehicles.
Okay.
Any more questions? If not, this is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. Item 12, an ordinance granting Rio Development Plan and Site Plan, This is an ordinance amending the Lake Bluff zoning regulation relating to the hours of operation for on-premises food and beverage service. Is there a motion to approve this ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. During the public hearing for the Lake Bluff Brewing Company's special use amendments to at the PCZBA's May 2022 regular meeting, the PCZBA expressed support for establishing uniform limitations on the hours of operations for restaurants rather than continue to regulate each individually. When the village board considered first reading of these amendments, it concurred that the PCZBA should review this topic. Accordingly, the PCZBA reviewed this issue and recommended the village adopt an ordinance creating a uniform set of hours of operation for food and beverage use in the central business district in order to, 1, improve the consistency, ease of administration and enforcement of the village zoning rules, and 2, bolster the economic vitality of the village in a manner that is conscientious of neighboring uses and residents. Following 2 sets of deliberation and the receipt of additional public comment, the village board requested certain revision to the draft ordinance it last considered at its December 12th meeting. Specifically, the village board requested that the ordinance no longer impose more restrictive hours for outdoor operations outside of Block 1. Accordingly, the attached draft ordinance now creates a new section 10-6A-13 and amends existing special use permits and outdoor dining approvals in order to establish the following hours of operation. You will read into this, the packet, that the hours of operation, depending on weekdays and weekends and holidays, in a sense, from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. midnight or 1 a.m. depending on the time. Any questions from the board?
So I know this was much discussed and, revised a couple of times. Just to be clear, if it was treated on an individual basis before, that required it to go to the village board every time to say, these are going to be our hours of operations. And with this new ordinance, these are the operational hours that are permitted. If they wish to operate at hours that are less than that, they don't need to come to the board to ask that permission. So overall, administratively, this is going to help the board not have to deal with each and every one of those requests and changes, correct?
And I would say further that it helps from an administrative and enforcement provision, that the idea if there's activity going on the street after certain hours that we know it shouldn't be, it's easier to know that, hey, you shouldn't be out here doing this at this time of evening or this early in the morning. So, yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
It will make our life easier, and we will be able also to compete more effectively against communities outside of, right next to Lake Bluff. Any questions on the board? This is a roll call. Clerk, please call the roll. Thank you.
Second reading. Yep, second final, yep. Trustee Hatch.
Aye.
Trustee Marquis.
Aye.
Trustee Ryder.
Aye.
Trustee Ankerman.
Aye.
And Trustee Fisher.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. The next item would be item 13, an ordinance for granting a Rio development plan and site plan approval for a sport court at the Lake Bluff Middle School. Yet this item was removed for our agenda today, correct?
The petitioner couldn't make it here this evening, has asked the board to take it up at a later date. I think that's going to be 2 weeks from tonight, but we're waiting to work with them on that. So they did ask for it to be tabled.
Great. Moving forward, item 14.
Just without objection, it'll be at the next meeting. We should do it to a date certain.
Let's do it. Let's move it to that.
Okay.
Do we need a motion? Do we need?
Just without objection. As long
So
as-
without objections?
Yes.
It'll be taken up 2 weeks from tonight.
Yep.
Okay.
That should be fine.
So in 2 weeks from tonight. Next item will be item 14, a resolution appointing village administrator Drew Irvin as deputy village clerk. Is there a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. A vacancy in the office of a Lake Bluff village clerk was created on October 10th, 2022, when village president Régis Charlot appointed and the board of trustees consented to the appointment of then village clerk Catherine Hatch to the unexpired term of former village trustee Kate Bryan. At the same time, it was determined that by the president and board of trustees that village administrator Drew Irvin would fulfill the responsibilities and duty of village clerk in the absence of an elected village clerk. Section 1-6A-4 of the village code states the village clerk may appoint by and with the approval of the board of trustees a deputy village clerk who shall be empowered in the absence of a village clerk to perform the duties and be invested with the powers of a village clerk, and shall hold office for and during the term of office of a village clerk. The Lake Bluff Municipal Code also states that, unless prohibited by statute, any duty of a village clerk may be performed by the deputy village clerk or an employee in such office. If approved, the attached resolution will ratify the October 10th, 2022 appointment of village administrator Drew Irvin as deputy village clerk. Any questions? What is the length of his appointment?
It is to the term until the next trustee, according to our ordinance, until another clerk is elected and/or appointed, if that is such a necessity.
So we're talking about April this year. So,
Correct.
So thank you very much for what you're doing for us today.
It's a voice vote.
Well, I just wanted to, it could potentially be further than April.
Yes.
Our duty on this board is to find a village clerk to help Drew on this board. So we found a few village clerks who decided to run for trustee. And so we ran out of village clerk. So our
I'm aware.
That's
why I'm saying.
so our mandate on this board is to find a person who would like to be a village clerk. Frankly, I would like that person to be elected. If we have to appoint that person, so be it. It is a voice vote, correct?
Yep.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion carries. Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is the trustees' report. Do any trustee wish to make a report?
15.
That was 15, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Item 15, an ordinance designating the building located at 24 East Scranton Avenue as a Lake Bluff historic landmark as the village market. Is there a motion to approve this ordinance?
So moved?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. On November 14th, 2022, the village received an application to designate the commercial building located at 24 East Scranton Avenue as a historic landmark. This application was submitted by the property owner, Lake Effect Holdings LLC. According to the application, the original village market was a wood frame structure constructed in 1885, which burned down in the late 1890s. The current village market, constructed in 1900, is identified as the first brick building built in the area and the oldest commercial building in the central business district. The building is on the National Register of Historic Places as part of the Lake Bluff Uptown Commercial Historic District. At its December 14th, 2022 regular meeting, the HPC conducted a public hearing and unanimously recommended that the village board designate the commercial building as a landmark for the reasons set forth in the attached draft ordinance. If approved, This would be the village's 25th active landmark and 32nd in total for all buildings that were approved as such. This would be the village's first commercial building designated as a historic landmark. Under many circumstances, routine alterations to the building, for example, sign permits, may trigger reviews by both the Architectural Board of Review and the Historic Preservation Commission. If desired by the board, staff will investigate possible amendments to streamline these reviews for future commercial landmarks. Comments and questions?
The only thing I would just, I guess, like to further underscore that last point in the memorandum talking about future changes to that. There hasn't been a lot of changes to that structure once it got rehabbed a number of years ago. And basically what's happened is from time to time, a different tenant has come in and there's been a change in the sign. And the idea is, it seems a little bit process heavy to have somebody come in if they're just gonna change, like, well, it went from the Village Market to Wisma, and all it changed was 4 letters. You know, the idea is, there a way, does the village want to revisit its procedures to maybe change that so as to not make it a negative or just a cumbersome process unnecessarily? I don't think that's the goal with the village. It doesn't further its historic preservation objectives, nor is it business friendly. So the idea, I think that you guys would probably want to look at that at some point.
It sounds like a great idea.
It does.
Yeah. Any comments?
I'm just really encouraged to see a business owner landmarking the building. So I think that's great, and I'm really encouraged to see that. And I know the HBC did a lot of work to try and get to this point, so it's nice to see that happening.
It's a fine structure. The History Museum always puts an emphasis on this building, and the butcher, who appears a little bit too bloody to me every time, but it's always a focal point of Lake Bluff. And frankly, for all the kids who bought candies in there, it's a special place. Yeah. So I'm happy this is happening.
So first reading, voice vote.
It's a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you very much. Next, item 16, the trustees' report. Do any trustees wish to make a report tonight? Thank you. Next would be, next would be item 17, the consideration of December 12th, 2022 executive session meeting minutes. Do we have any changes to these minutes? I should get a motion. Can I please have a motion on this?
I move to approve the minutes as written.
Second.
Thank you. No change to these minutes? So it's a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. This motion carries as well. Thank you. Do we have an executive session tonight?
We do.
We do. Okay. So that would be, and I have to read that. May I have a motion to go into closed session for the purpose of discussing property acquisition pursuant to the Illinois Open Meeting Act, and that upon the adjournment of the closed session, this regular meeting will be deemed to automatically be adjourned by the same vote without the conduct of any further business.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. This is a roll call. Clerk?
Trustee Marquis,
Aye.
Trustee Ryder,
Aye.
Trustee Inkeman,
Aye.
Trustee Fisher,
Aye.
and Trustee Hatch.
Aye.
Thank you. This concludes the open part of the village board meeting. Thank you to anyone in attendance today.
Please don't.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.